I think we should start now. Hi, every,
Okay.
Hi everyone. I am Parul Gupta, MS student at University of Southern California. I'm working with Waze. I would like to welcome you all to this event. You are what you eat. I'm also glad to introduce our speaker today, Kate Cohen, who is a dietitian and nutritionist with Lawrence Institute of Transformative Medicine of USC, who will be telling us today how to optimize and prepare a well balanced, nutritious meal, how to do grocery shops, and tips and life hacks for to lead to a healthy life. So I am again like welcoming you all, and now Kate can begin the session.
Okay. Let's see. Do I need permission to share my screen?
No, you are host already. You can start.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hold on one sec. Oops, sorry. Oh, I don't want to give you the answers yet. Okay. Hi. So I'm Kate Cohen. As she just told you, I'm the dietitian for the Lawrence Ellison Institute of Transformative Medicine at USC. We're an oncology research clinic, and we see patients for cancer and wellness. And my job there is to counsel, give advice, give guidance about eating healthy, whether you're somebody dealing with a disease or just trying to maintain the best health you can. We don't have a giant group today, so I would say if people have questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat. And if I catch them as we go along, I'll try to address them. But otherwise, I think we have time at the end for questions. So, but I definitely want to be able to sort of hit the points that you'd like to hear about. So here we go. Here, let me just get this out of my way. Okay. Nutrition, a socially distant world. I know the year has obviously been very different for everybody. I'll say my disclosures right up front are that, I feel compelled to say this part because in general, I know people hear a lot of different nutrition advice and nutrition guidelines, and you're on the internet and you hear from friends who had this kind of diet. By not listening to anything that doesn't have proof, it, cuts through some of the garbage. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Why nutrition seems so complicated, why nutrition is important, what can you do to help keep yourself healthy, what would a healthy diet look like for you, some skills that will help you get there, and then we'll wrap it up and I'll answer some questions. So why does it seem so confusing? You guys would probably be able to answer that better than I, but I think one of the big reasons is that nutrition seems very contradictory. When you look around at the news or again on the internet, it seems like every time you hear something about nutrition, somebody is coming up months or a year later and saying, okay, what we just told you before, that's actually not true anymore. We told you to eat eggs, now eggs are bad. We told you to eat butter, now butter is bad. Oh no, butter's good again. So, science is always changing and we want to be able to take advantage of that. So unfortunately, the reality is that there will always be new information, but just like with anything with science, we want to learn from that and benefit from it. So you just want to try to keep it as simple as possible, and that's what we're going to talk about. Here's I thought this was an interesting timeline. This is nutrition research, in case you were in case you were wondering how it ends up getting so confusing. Nutrition research has been going for a long time. And the more we learn, the more we know about how food can help us and how different nutrients can benefit your diet and what you really need. What I find kind of interesting and comforting about it is that, everything old is new again. The simple things definitely tend to be true. The more you get from real food, the better you are. So, even the more there's science, we still kind of stick to the basics. This one I like. This is part of why I think nutrition does get confusing. The food industry is really working against you. If you look at food packaging these days, I'm not sure if anybody is conscious of nutrition labels, but the FDA recently required a labeling change on packaged food. So you've probably noticed that they shifted around how things are on the labels, but you'll find that when you're looking at packaged food, it gets really confusing. The food industry is trying to make things seem healthier than they are often. There's something called the halo of health, where there are foods that present themselves as being healthy and use misleading language and misleading packaging sizes and portion sizes to make it seem like it's healthy for you, but oftentimes it isn't at the portion that you would really eat. So here's an example. Cheetos, not a healthy food anyway, but part of what makes this actually really deceiving. So this is kind of your typical large bag of Cheetos at the grocery store. There are 8.5 servings in this container of Cheetos. But if you look at the nutrition facts, you'll see it says 170 calories on a serving. That's the number that's really big. So somebody might pick this up and say, great, it only has 170 calories. That's not that bad. But what are the chances that you're going to eat 8.5 servings of this at a time? Chances are, sorry, that sounded confusing the way I said it. Nobody just sits down and eats one little serving because it's 21 Cheetos. So chances are you're going to eat half the bag, and then all of a sudden you're about 50 grams of fat in. So the labeling can be very confusing. And that's the kind of thing that you just have to watch out for, which oftentimes it ends up being easier just to eat real food. So I think you're engineering students. I don't know how many of you are chemists, but if anyone knows, if you can type in the chat, if anyone knows what all these words have in common, probably not the hardest question you'll get today. Looks a lot like sugar. Every single one of these words is another way of saying sugar. So the other reason that packaging labeling can be very confusing is that every single one of these words is actually sugar, but a lot of them are designed to make it seem like they're healthy. Agave nectar. Agave nectar is one of those things that seems healthier, but it's just sugar. Your body is just treating it as sugar. Your body's processing all these things the same way. Some of them are more chemically created than others, but at the end of the day, they are all sweeteners. So it's something to be aware of. When you're reading a nutritional label, I don't know how many people have kind of analyzed these labels, but the ingredients that are closest to the top are the ones that have it's arranged by volume. So whichever are the first few ingredients, there's the most of those. Chances are if you're eating something that has any of these words within the first three, that is a food that you should probably be avoiding because it's loaded with sugar. Again, talking about the halo of health, I think I started to mention that, where it's something that seems healthy because of the packaging and because of your perception about it. But these are all foods that are just sugar bombs. They're all foods that I think are typical breakfast for people who don't have a lot of time but are trying to make good choices, which is what ends up being so complicated about this. They're all things that seem healthy, right? Maybe the muffin less so, but a blueberry muffin, a nice bowl of cereal, or just, if you're just going to grab a coffee, but you're getting one of these Starbucks coffee drinks. These are all foods that just have a ton of sugar in them, but are presented like they're healthy foods. So this is something where you have to really be a critical thinker about looking at the labels and making your choices. And we'll talk about kind of some alternate choices. I think somebody asked about brown sugar. Brown sugar is definitely still sugar. Your body's still responding to it as sugar. If I was pressed, I would much rather have you have a raw sugar product as opposed to any of the artificial sweeteners, because your body knows what to do with them. With the artificial sweeteners, your body doesn't know how to digest them, and they can cause lots of GI problems. So, it's not a good thing. Wait, I think this question is cut off on my screen. In terms of health hazards. So the health hazard of brown sugar is really the same as eating too much of any kind of sugar. It's not necessarily worse, but it's not better. So, why should you be motivated to have a healthy diet? I know when you're younger, your metabolism is probably faster, and it seems like you can eat anything, and you don't usually have the same sort of medical issues that, that older people do. And it seems like you can, live on coffee and Diet Coke and fast food, and, it doesn't affect you as much. But I think the way to look at it is to think about all the benefits that you could be getting that you're missing out on from not kind of taking advantage of optimizing the food that you're putting into your body. We know from science that it can help your mood, it can help your energy, your stress. I know a lot of us are dealing with stress, especially in an academic environment. It can boost your concentration and performance as far as how well you can do, how well you can perform. And that's a combination of the food on your body and your metabolism and how the food affects you. Having a bad diet can be very stressful on your body. It can affect your weight. Your weight can affect your mood. So all those things come into play. Not to mention a high sugar diet really has an effect on your blood sugar, which I'm going to talk about. And that can really affect your energy level and give you, inconsistent energy levels throughout the day. Overall, a poor diet and eating a diet that causes you to be an unhealthy weight can contribute to disease down the road. It's a cancer risk. It's a risk of diabetes. It's a risk of heart disease. So those are all things that the sooner you start thinking about them, the better. Um, so what do you do about it? How can you start now? You're in college, you're in graduate school for some of you, but it doesn't mean that there aren't habits that you can start working on now that become, if you make a habit part of your everyday life, little by little, you just start working on it. They just become, they become things that you do all the time. It's not like, I would never suggest that you go on a diet. I don't like diets. I don't think you should like a diet. I want to come up with something for people that you can do consistently. So building these healthful habits is a way to start, getting on the right track and just staying on the right track as you get older and become a real adult. So let's go through this. So this is the first one, staying on a schedule. I know when you're in college, especially, this one's really tricky. Everybody's schedule is very erratic. It's hard to control sometimes since you're not setting necessarily the time for your day. But what you can control is when you eat, when you take your medicine, and when you sleep. Not all of you are taking some kind of medication, but it's one of the things that comes into play. So your body likes rhythm. It likes to have predictability. That's what allows your body to get into this state of homeostasis, where your body is functioning at peak performance. It's a state of balance. So when you're out of balance, your body is always going to be looking to find that balance. So one of the things that you can do is really listen, is to listen to what your body is telling you. Because for a lot of times people say, oh, I'm not hungry for breakfast in the morning. I'm skipping lunch because I'm just too busy. I eat at different times every day. But I'm challenging you to try to stop and take a minute every day, because the truth is that if you really listen to when you are hungry and just sort of, instead of sort of plowing over it, which is what a lot of us do, if you listen to the rhythms of your body of when you're hungry, chances are you're hungry around the same time every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even if you're somebody that thinks that you don't get hungry in the morning, chances are you've just sort of pushed through that and gotten out of that habit, which is not a great habit to have, because breakfast is really important, which I'll talk about. But listening to your body and being able to start to figure out what your rhythms are is going to help you figure out when those meals should be coming. So I'm all about 3 meals a day and no snacks, and this is why. Blood sugar, and I think that people hear this kind of these blood sugar descriptions and think it doesn't apply to them, that it only applies to somebody who's really overweight or somebody who has diabetes or some other kind of disease. But it really affects everybody, because how you eat and the amount of kind of sugar in your diet and when you eat, and when you eat erratically, affects everybody. So ideally what we're going for is a nice even curve of your blood sugar. See, I should have done that one first. Wait, sorry. Whoop, I lost control. This is what we want. We want this nice, even balance with your blood sugar, where the way that it normally works is that in the morning you wake up, your blood sugar is low, you eat breakfast, your blood sugar goes up because the insulin is coming out and pulling the blood sugar out, and then your blood sugar starts to lower again. Sorry, I think I'm probably going through this too fast, but then as you get closer to having your next meal, your blood sugar starts to drop, you get hungry, and you eat again. Blood sugar goes up, the insulin comes out and it does its job. So you have this balance through the day. But what happens for a lot of us is that sometimes you're skipping breakfast, sometimes you're just grabbing a muffin for breakfast or like a really sugary coffee. You're not really giving your body enough. Your blood sugar spikes, and then your insulin is not doing its job. Your blood sugar crashes. It's affecting your mood. It's affecting your energy level. When your blood sugar crashes, you run and get more coffee or a candy bar or an apple or something that's just all sugar, and this cycle just goes on and on all throughout the day. And that's what can contribute to this sort of this roller coaster. They call it a blood sugar roller coaster, where it's affecting your mood and your energy, and it can go on all day long, and people think that they're making these healthy choices, but they're contributing to this, what ultimately can become insulin resistance. And it can start, it starts whenever it starts, so certainly at a young age. So that's why it's something to pay attention to, which is why I believe in 3 meals a day without snacking. But of course, the trick is you got to make sure you're having 3 good meals in a day. So it's about the choices you're making, right? There's always the choice between, you know, there's always the choice between eating something that seems like healthy food and eating something that's fast and convenient. But I think that you can do both. Certainly in LA, and whether you're cooking at home or whether you're taking food out, there's always an option to be able to put something together that gives your body what it needs and that's still, satisfying and will last you until your next meal. One of the other choices that we all make is about when you're eating, and this is, for a lot of this can be about your blood sugar. It's about, are you eating, are you eating because you're actually hungry? Is that why you're eating at 11 o'clock at night? Or is it because you're social? Is it because you're stressed? Is it because, you found out that you're an elf? Whatever reason that you're eating, if it's not about being hungry, that's something that is a good thing to take a look at. Um, Exercise. I'm not going to get too far into exercise, but I can't talk about nutrition and sort of your health in general without bringing that up, because especially for people who are trying to manage their weight and trying to maintain a healthy weight, you can't just do it with food. It has to be food and exercise and activity working together. And I know with COVID, a lot of us have been indoors. We've been kind of stuck at our desks 24 hours a day. The boundaries between personal life and work have sort of ceased to exist. So it's been harder to have a routine, but it's really important. Like, I can't stress enough, even if you're somebody that does a crazy workout in the morning, then if you go sit at your desk for 8 hours in a day, you're still going to have the effects of sort of inertia. So you really want to get in the habit of getting up every hour or two, walking around. Having my boss at the Ellison Institute is really into walking meetings. At least one meeting a day should be walking, or do walking phone calls, whatever works into your day. But it's definitely important. When you're eating out, next one. I know a lot of us eat out, order out food. If this is something that is part of your everyday life, if your everyday schedule, it's not, it's not a treat. So don't treat it like a treat. So every time you order in, you still want to go with the same guidelines that you would follow if you were making food at home and, trying to eat healthfully. So it's changing your mindset about the ordering in the restaurants. If it's something that you're doing 4, 5, 6 times a week, make sure that you're doing it right, and you know, look at the same ways that we're going to be talking about it. Sleep. Sleep is super important. I know this is tough for everybody that has a big workload, especially when you have a lot of, when you have big assignments, when your schedule is a little unpredictable. But sleep is incredibly important when it comes to maintaining your weight, maintaining your stress levels. There are studies that show that people that don't sleep well, don't sleep enough, don't get good REM sleep, have trouble managing their weight. Those are generally people that, have issues with that. So it's really important to get in. Think about sleep habits. Is your room really light? Are you sleeping with the TV on? Are you on your computer until 2 seconds before you go to sleep? These are all things that you should look at. Do you sleep with pets? Pets are a big detractor of good sleep. So, whatever the things that are getting in the way of your good sleep, think about it. Harvard did a study showing that 6.5 hours of exposure to blue light over the course of a day suppresses melatonin and shifts your circadian rhythm. So it literally, prevents you from getting a good sleep. So there are things you can do about that. Blue light blocking glasses is one thing. If you're on your computer all day long, or definitely at a certain point in the evening, it's something you should consider. So, if your circadian rhythm is off, it means you can't fall asleep and you're not sleeping as well. So, those are all things to consider. Alcohol, anytime, late at night before you go to sleep, it takes an hour to metabolize an ounce of alcohol. So if that's something that's preventing you from getting a good sleep, just factor that in. Okay, so here's the $1,000,000 question. What does a healthy diet look like? Well, the easiest way to think about it, getting back to the you are what you eat, is a healthy diet looks different for everybody. There are guidelines that I'm going to give you, but people have different needs. What does get very confusing is how many different diets there are out there. I'm sure that you've all heard about a lot of these different diets, and I'm sure you have people that are always telling you about different diets. So when you're trying to lose weight, any one of these diets could work for a while. Any diet can help you lose weight or help change things for a while, but I don't believe that any of these work long term. I think that the biggest indicator of how you pick a diet for you is, can you do this? Can you picture yourself doing this 3 months from now? Could you be eating like this 6 months from now, 2 years from now? Is this a way that you could eat? Because if the answer is no, this is not you're not on the right path. I think especially for weight management, people tend to make the mistake of thinking, I'm gonna adopt this, one of the diets on this list or some other way of eating, and I'm gonna do that until I get to my goal weight. And then I'll go back to what I was doing before. I'll go back to what's normal for me. And that's really the big disconnect. Because if you're doing something and then going back to normal, it's the normal that's a problem. Normal is what got you to where you are. So what we want to figure out is adapting, again, going back to the habits, adapting good habits that put you on track to be healthier overall, that cause you to maintain a good weight. So what's the best diet? Does anybody have an opinion about any of these diets? Or did I already set up the answer?
I guess you set it up. I know it works best for me, but I wouldn't suggest it for everyone else.
So yeah, so the answer is there isn't one right answer. There's lots of people adapt to different diets, even on this list. Like there are times when keto has been recommended for different people. In the oncology community, there's a lot of evidence about keto for certain, glioblastoma, certain types of cancer. There's evidence about that, but even those, in reality, are very difficult to execute. Low carb, in general, I would say that the diets that we find are the most effective are lower in processed carbohydrates and starchy carbohydrates, but have, still include healthy fat, lean protein. Let's see. Instead of just labeling it as one diet is best, I usually try to talk to people about kind of the guidelines that you should follow. Minimally processed. So what does that mean? Because I think where people get confused sometimes is the idea of processed food. Frozen vegetables are considered processed, but I would consider those healthy. So minimally processed. That means that we're looking for food as much as possible. You should be looking at whole foods, whole fruits, vegetables, lean protein sources, whole grains, and healthy fats. So minimally processed, but it doesn't mean, that you can't ever eat anything that comes out of a box or a bag. Minimal added sugars. What's this question? How much nutrients is lost in frozen food? In general, I think, a lot of frozen food has been tested, frozen fruits and vegetables, and are actually, can be higher in nutrients than some of the fresh versions. If you have certain fresh vegetables that you buy at the farmer's market and you bring them home and they sit in your refrigerator drawer for 2 weeks, little by little, they're losing nutrients during that time. They're oxidizing. But there's a lot of frozen fruits and vegetables that are flash frozen. So they're picked at the peak of ripeness and they're frozen immediately when they have the most nutrients. So, a lot of those can actually be healthier for you than, the fresh version. So, frozen fruits and vegetables in particular are a great option. What exactly is lean protein and what are resources? Yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, so here, I'm going to get to that one. Minimal added sugar, minimal saturated fat and sodium. So added sugar is a big one. You're going to see that, again, that's something that you're going to see on a lot of food labels. The new food label now actually has to separate sugar with the added sugar. Because for example, an apple has sugar, but that's sugar that occurs naturally in an apple. But if I buy applesauce at the store, most applesauce also has added sugar. So if you're buying applesauce, I always try to buy applesauce without added sugar because it's already sweet enough from the apple. So that's something that you could look at in the food label. Saturated fat, how much sugar is ideal per serving? Well, it's ideal to try to keep your sugar for a woman to about 100 calories per day of added sugar, and for a man about 150. So what that translates to actually is, for women is 24 grams and men is 36 grams of added sugar. And I know I'm not trying to be slippery by distinguishing that, but when you're eating fruits and vegetables, there's sugar in those. I'm not always so strictly counting that unless you're somebody who's diabetic. So the sugar that we worry about is the sugar that's been added because that's processed. That's sugar that doesn't need to be there. It's hard to break it down per serving like that. So I think what's better is to look at your diet in terms of the whole pattern of it and to just make, the healthiest choices you can. Plant forward. I say plant forward because I know there's a lot of confusion over the plant-based diet and what that actually means. So plant-based, plant forward, they're all kind of the same thing. I'm not saying go be a vegetarian, go be a vegan, unless that's your choice. Plant forward means the majority of what's on your plate should be a plant. It should be, so that can be a fruit, it can be a vegetable, it can be a whole grain, it can even be some of the protein sources like a legume or soy. At least 50% of your grains should be whole grains. As far as I'm concerned, yes, I'll talk about artificial sweeteners. As far as I'm concerned, all your grains should be whole grain, but at least 50%. Whole grains would be, the distinction between grains is, white bread versus whole grain bread. But, white sourdough bread is still healthier than white bread because of the fermentation. So when we're talking about grains, though, that means brown rice over white rice. It means, quinoa is considered a whole grain. There's a whole list of whole grains that are options that I think a lot of people don't even consider. And then, so lean protein sources, what I mean by that is, say, chicken breast, turkey breast, beans, eggs. Eggs are considered a lean protein source, even lean cuts of beef. What's not a lean protein source would be like a fattier cut of beef. So say like, a really fatty piece of red meat. Pork is considered a fattier cut of meat. I mean, it's considered a red meat. So any of the meats that are fattier would be considered those are not lean sources of meat. Canned beans. I love canned beans. I have a slide on canned beans later here. Beans are a great protein source. They're a plant-based protein source. They're really high in fiber. They have some fat, but it's, I'm good with the fat in there. Beans, you have to be mindful of the portion size. The only thing less healthy about canned beans versus the dried beans is with canned beans, you want to always make sure that you're buying the low sodium version. And if you want to go even further than that, you just take them and rinse them before you have them. You can dump them into a strainer and just rinse them with water. But as long as you're getting the low sodium version, canned beans are an excellent protein option. Trader Joe's also has a great pack of lentils and a few things like that that are already pre-cooked, and those are also a great option. Lentils are fantastic. Lentils have more protein than any of the other beans, so they're like the king of the bean. Why is sodium bad? Well, sodium is in your diet. Everybody has sodium, in some form, and you need it. If you're somebody who is eating a lot of processed food, your diet probably has a lot more sodium than other people. The majority of sodium from food comes from processed food, canned food, food that's in boxes, prepackaged chips and snacks and crackers and that kind of things. And the sodium can contribute to elevating your blood sugar. It can raise your blood pressure. It can make you retain water, so it makes you kind of bloated. So yes, somebody answered the question. Depending on your health, too much sodium is bad. Some people aren't salt sensitive at all. So for them, it's not something they ever have to consider. In general, the foods that are high in sodium are foods that I'd want you to stay away from anyway. They're the overly processed foods or fast food. So, I don't think you have to go out of your way to try to be low sodium unless somebody has told you that. But the foods that are high in sodium are just generally good foods to avoid. Other than your fries, but everybody has to have fries sometimes. Where are we? Okay, I lost it again. Okay, so here's a plate. There's been a lot of different of these plates created. This one was created by Harvard. I like this one. It really shows what I'm talking about. In this, about 75% of your plate is plants. So vegetables, fruits, you'll see the proportion is a little heavier on the vegetables. In general, you can never have too many vegetables, non-starchy vegetables. So the only ones I'm saying you're moderating are really peas, corn, and potatoes. But other than that, you don't need to be portion controlled. You can't overdo it with your vegetables. With your whole grains or your beans, those you have to actually monitor the portion. They're still healthy for you, but you have to be mindful of how much you eat. So the whole grains are important, healthy proteins. This gives you some of the lists. What's interesting about a lot of the different foods that are good for you is they overlap. Rarely is a food just giving you one thing. Vegetables are giving you fiber. They're giving you phytonutrients. Fruits are often they're giving you fiber. They're giving you phytonutrients. Grains sometimes have a healthy fat. Some of the fruits, avocado is a fruit. That's a great healthy fat. Healthy protein, when you're talking about something like nuts give you healthy fat, fiber, and protein. So this is just kind of a good overview. The healthy oils are a great way of getting your healthy fat. Things like olive oil. I like olive oil, walnut oil. And then as far as the saturated fat, which I talked about a little bit, those are the fats that are solid at room temperature. So things like butter, coconut oil, bacon, those are things that you want to definitely eat in moderation, if at all. And again, that might be for some people that have different health conditions or, heart disease in their family, that might be more of an issue. So here's one of my biggest things, breakfast. I know how many people skip breakfast, but I am completely against that. Breakfast is really the most important part of your day. You've been fasting overnight. Breakfast kickstarts your metabolism. It gives you energy to start your day. Evidence shows that people who eat breakfast are better at managing their weight. I'm just kind of listing off reasons now. There's so many good reasons to eat breakfast. It improves your energy level and concentration levels. Plus this, big boost, your body is much better equipped to burn calories earlier in the day. So by thinking that you're skipping breakfast and you'll be saving yourself on calories, your body is still going to get what it needs. So if you skip breakfast, your body will still find those calories later in the day, but it's at a time when it's not as well tuned to be able to burn those calories. So get them in early. There's an expression, breakfast like a queen, dinner like a pauper. And that really holds true. Other benefits. So as you see, there are a lot of benefits to breakfast. So how do you do it? How do you stay full between your meals and manage your blood sugar and, get what you need without needing to snack? In addition to that healthy plate, which really tells you the food, these are really the elements of how you stay full in between your meals. The protein. Protein is really key. So protein is whether you're having an animal protein, whether you're having a plant-based protein like beans or soy or any of the foods that add up to give you protein. Healthy fat. You always have to have some healthy fat in your meal. Fat is what triggers the hormones to tell your brain that you're full, that you're satiated. So if you have a meal without fat, chances are you're going to be hungry sooner. Healthy fat can be avocado, it can be nuts, it can be olive oil, it can be, any other sort of like nuts or seeds. Looking at my little list. Fiber. You get fiber from a number of different sources. None of us get enough fiber. We should be going for 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. The average person gets about 14 grams a day. So you've got to get fiber in starting first thing in the morning. It helps reduce your risk of cancer. It helps keep you full. It helps manage your weight. It helps keep you regular if you have any GI issues or if you're somebody who doesn't go to the bathroom every day. Fiber is key. You can get fiber from fruits, from vegetables, from whole grains. You can also add fiber if you're somebody that likes a smoothie at breakfast. It's really easy to get fiber into your, your breakfast smoothie with ground flaxseed or chia seeds. Yes, that can help with satiation. Hydration. I'm putting this in here. Again, this is one of those things. Nobody drinks enough water. I hear this in my practice every single day. But being dehydrated can affect you. And chances are by the time you're thirsty, you're really dehydrated. The rule of thumb is to try to drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you weigh 150 pounds, 75 ounces a day. It's better to try to sip it through the course of the day. If you're somebody that has a tendency to wake up during the night to have to go to the bathroom, I would cut your water off by 6 o'clock. If you're somebody that gets full really fast at meals, maybe don't drink with your meal. Jerry, definitely go get yourself some water. You're going to want to have that for the rest of this. The other thing to think about with hydration is if you're somebody who drinks a lot of coffee, think of water as a plus and coffee as a minus. So if you're drinking caffeine all day long, if you're drinking lots of coffee, coffee is dehydrating. So the more coffee you drink, you really have to kind of up the ante on your water to sort of keep up with that, to make sure that you're, that you're matching what you need. And I'm putting in a word for the sugars at this point, because it's not just that some of these are dehydrating. It's really easy to sort of forget how much sugar you're getting in a lot of these drinks. And especially if you're somebody that's trying to manage your weight, this is such an easy habit to change. I'm not saying you have to immediately go and start drinking water all day long, but there's other options, iced tea, like actual iced tea that you make from a tea bag, hot tea, even unsweetened drinks. And this is a good time to talk about the artificial sweeteners. So in general, artificial sweeteners, don't affect your blood sugar in the same way, but they do have an effect on your blood sugar. So if you're somebody that has 4 Diet Cokes in a day, that adds up. There's lots of chemicals in the Diet Coke that are affecting you negatively, and all those artificial sweeteners are building up in your system. They're not tolerated by your system, so they actually, your gut really just doesn't know how to metabolize them, so they just get swept out. But for a lot of people, they can cause GI problems in addition to like bloating and malabsorption. But the sugar in all these drinks is something that is really important to think about, because you go to the store, you grab one of these, you don't put a lot of thought into it, and it's just, this is purely added sugar. You're not getting anything from it. It's filling you up, and chances are it's causing you to not eat something that actually would be healthy for your body. But more importantly, it's a really easy thing to give up if you're trying to manage your weight, because if you have a couple a day, all of a sudden, I've had patients that lose weight just by stopping soda, or just by stopping even the whole halo of health I talked about, something like the Snapple iced tea that seems healthy. They call it all natural. It's made with green and black tea, but yet, look how much sugar it has in it. Sugar alternatives like stevia and monk fruit. I like those both better. Stevia also is considered fiber because it comes from a plant. There aren't great studies on them because stevia and monk fruit are plants. They can't be, nobody can basically own stevia. Like nobody can, in the same way that there are certain products that can be trademarked by a company. Nobody knows the secret of Coke but Coke. Anybody can use stevia, and for that reason, nobody has put money into really doing a lot of research on it, since it's just sort of out there in the public. But that said, stevia is not in the same category as the other artificial sweeteners, because it is something that's derived from a plant. So if you're going to have something that's sweetened, sweetened with stevia or monk fruit is still a better option, because it is truly a natural sweetener. What about honey? Honey is sugar. I'm not saying don't ever have sugar, but I think you should acknowledge that anything that's actually sugar will affect your body in that way. So, it's better to have a teaspoon of honey than, if you're having a teaspoon of honey in your tea once a day, that's fine. I think where you have to start to be wary of things like that is if you have a teaspoon of honey in your tea and you have 6 cups of tea in a day, because all of a sudden that's a lot. Raw sugar cane, same thing. It's just sugar. It's not bad. It's not good. You just have to be mindful of how much you have. Canned coconut water. Really, it just depends on which one. I've looked at some of those, and there's such a swing in the ingredients and how much sweetener is in them or what other ingredients are in them. If you're somebody that tends to be kind of dehydrated, coconut water can be hydrating because it has a lot of potassium. I don't know what jaggery is, so I don't know how to respond to that one. Supplements. I am not into supplements. Supplements, whether it's vitamins, minerals, somebody's always telling you about something that is going to boost your immunity, especially in this time of COVID. I know there's a ton of people who started taking vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc because the word somehow got out that those would, if you took those supplements, somehow they would prevent you from getting COVID, or if you got COVID, they would keep you from being sick. But there is not enough evidence to show that. And it is not healthy for you to take zinc long-term. Vitamin D, there's so many studies that show that, it can get in the way of other medications. It can interfere, it can contribute to chronic diseases. It doesn't prevent breaking a hip or any of the things that people think that it would help with later on as they get older and protect their bones. The best thing you can do for your body is to get everything you need from food. Your body absorbs vitamins and nutrients much better from food than it does from any of these different supplements. There's a big swing in how much absorption there is from any of these different, whether it's coated enough to get to your stomach, and more importantly, there's so much, there's just not enough oversight with all these vitamins. So oftentimes they don't have what they say they have, or they have the different proportions, when companies have done independent tests at the quality of vitamins and minerals. You know, they're either toxic ingredients, or they're not exactly what they're telling you they are. And that's not even looking at whether they do what they say they're going to do. So just for the potential for, you know, toxicity. I read a statistic recently that the largest number of cases of liver toxicity a year are from vitamin and supplement overdose, or from, you know, poor ingredients in supplements and people just taking them over and over again. So, you know, there's a word, it's called polypharmacy, which is people who just take a lot of different things. And in general, the least number of things you can take medications, the better off you're going to be. So you should definitely try to get what you need from food. So, you know, fish oil, don't take fish oil, eat fish. Don't take green tea capsules, drink green tea. Vitamin D, get it from the sun. If you sit outside for 15 minutes a day without sunscreen on, your body will convert cholesterol into vitamin D, and that's a much better source for you. Raw garlic. I don't have a specific thought on raw garlic. Any of those, you know, can be healthy. There are purported health benefits of garlic. How to shop. I know that was one of the requests. So I wasn't clear how many of you, I know right now maybe there aren't people living in dorms, so everybody's kind of doing their own shopping. You know, I know people have said this before about staying on the outer ring of the grocery store. So what does that actually mean? You know, the outer ring is generally where you would find the fruits, the vegetables, would say probably the butcher, so like the fresh meat. You know, the fresher the food is that you get, the better off you are. So in general, the middle aisles are where you usually find processed food, foods in bottles, foods in jars. Yes, that's what the outer ring is. Prioritize whole foods when you're at the store. Fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts. A lot of times in the outer ring, they have those bins with like the nuts and seeds and grains if you buy those by the pound in bulk. Don't buy junk. If you don't buy it, it won't be there at your house, and then you don't have to avoid it. It doesn't sound like, I know it's not rocket science, but a lot of things with nutrition and creating habits are about knowing what your potential minefields are. If you're somebody who's susceptible to stress eating or eating junk food, if it's around, don't buy it. And if you're a parent, your kids don't need it either. So it's not like you have to be worried that you're keeping it from them. Learn to cook, even if you don't think you can. Sorry, my dog is moaning. Even if you don't think you can, now is the time to start. And you can start super simple. There's nothing but recipe websites right now on the internet. Pick a couple recipes that you really like, that seem appealing to you, and learn how to make them so that you get to the point where you don't need to look at the recipe and they'll just become part of your rotation. You can adapt them, you can change them, but you know, the more that you can learn how to cook, the less you're reliant on having to buy prepared food, order out, and use templates. You can come up with ways to do sort of quick recipes, salads, bowls, where you can really just mix and match and swap out ingredients. Ready-made foods, we talked a little bit about frozen foods, but those can be a great way of speeding up the process, and especially if you're somebody that doesn't cook that well. Canned beans, frozen vegetables, even buying a rotisserie chicken and taking the skin off and using that as part of, you know, a dish you're making is just a way of making the process go really fast. Like this one. And I'll send anybody who wants it. I have a lot of recipes, but like there's a website that I love called Old Ways. They're a big proponent of the Mediterranean diet, which is a diet I really love. So they have a lot of resources on their website, but this is one that they had literally just about beans, because beans are a big part of the Mediterranean diet. But look, this is 9 different things you can do with beans to make beans into a dish. So wrapping it up, you know, it's all about establishing good habits. Come up with a schedule, figure out when your body wants to eat and try to stick to it. In general, people that need to snack aren't eating enough at their meals. So make sure you get protein, fiber, and healthy fat at every one of your meals. Don't eat when you're not hungry. If you find yourself eating and emotionally eating or snacking, divert, take a walk, drink a glass of water, think about what you had at your meal. Chances are you didn't eat enough at the meal before. Make sure you get what you need at your meals and look at portion sizes. We didn't really spend much time on portion sizes, but for certain foods, the portion sizes matter. Carbs, something like beans, something like grains. Vegetables, portion sizes don't matter that much. And stay active. Staying active is the other part of helping to balance your diet so that you're not counting your calories or having to be obsessed with what you're eating every minute of the day. Let's see. That's kind of all I got other than my favorite quote by Michael Pollan: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So what resources would you recommend to check nutrient composition for food? There's a website called Calorie King. If you really want to know exactly what's in your food, that's a really good, easy website. Calorie King, KING.com is a really handy one. Something about foods having different pH scales. The food that you eat can't change the pH balance of your blood. As much as people tell you that, like people that are into drinking alkaline water, it's not going to change the pH of your blood. If you decide that you're only eating acidic foods 24 hours a day, will it affect you negatively? Perhaps. Meat is more acidic, so that can make you lean more acidic. But if you eat a balanced diet, you shouldn't really have to be paying attention to the pH of your food. I am not a chef, so I know that the balance between, the point about acidity is definitely great. There are books that kind of talk more about that, about the balance between the acidity and bringing out the flavor. I think, cooking is the best thing you can do to get yourself healthy and inspired about the food you eat. So whether it's finding great cookbooks or great cooking websites, that's a good way to go. But if anybody has any specific questions, I know, this is a huge topic. I know there's a ton that I didn't cover. It's hard to kind of speak to everybody because you're all different and all your needs are different. So I think it's good to just try to make it as uncomplicated as you can. The more whole food you can eat, the better off you're going to be. But if anybody, sure.
So there's this concept, I don't know if you want to call it a concept, but it's the diabetic stomach, where like the stomach is larger than any other part of your body, and I guess it like indicates maybe that you're pre-diabetic or diabetic or something like that. And I've heard that, of course, you can't target your stomach when you're working out and just do a whole bunch of ab workouts. But I feel like there may be a way to reduce the size of your stomach via your diet. Is that something you know?
I would say if you're concerned about your stomach or about, let's back up. If you're concerned about that you might be pre-diabetic, the first thing I would do is make sure that you're having a checkup every year with a blood test. And then you can actually see your HbA1c, your hemoglobin A1c, which looks at your 3-month average of blood sugar. And if that's over 5.4, that's considered pre-diabetic. So I wouldn't go by the size of your stomach. I would go by what your blood tests say. If you want to be affecting your stomach, everybody's metabolism is different, but definitely reducing starchy carbohydrates and monitoring portion size is a big way to do that. I don't think you can spot reduce and just lose weight in your stomach. But in general, when I have people who are trying to lose weight, starchy carbs are usually the first culprit. And having meals that are just loaded with carbs. A lot of people think having oatmeal for breakfast is super healthy, but if you just have a big bowl of oatmeal, chances are it's going to spike your blood sugar and it will start to, put on weight, as opposed to something that's balanced with protein and fat. So I've never actually heard about the diabetic stomach thing, but I would much rather see you get a blood test than, do it by looking in the mirror.
Retweet. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, so I have one question.
Sure.
How about the diet for a person with hypothyroidism? What he or she should consider about preparing meals and all? Like it should be low in sodium, and because it is said like once a person is diagnostic with the thyroid problem, it will go till your like your life, the whole life. So any thoughts about it?
Well, so it's hard to make a blanket recommendation for everybody with hypothyroidism because it does, everybody's variation of it is a little different. But in general, in general, keeping with a kind of the way that I've been suggesting, just with keeping with a healthy, balanced diet is usually considered the way to go. If you email me offline, there's some specific recommendations, but the truth is that really just managing your blood sugar, so staying kind of on the lower carbohydrate side, but, fruits, vegetables, lean protein, healthy fat, all those things still apply.
Hmm.
But I can email you kind of some other specific things.
Sure. And if you can share, if you can like share your presentation with all the audience for the people
Sure.
you can put it in chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't have it saved as a PDF.
Yeah,
I
but
have it as a PowerPoint file
it should be fine, I think. You can still share
that
it.
I can just drag it into chat.
Yeah, and there is an option of file as well, like
Oh, okay.
in the chat if you'll go.
Okay. Okay, so while I'm doing that, I'll answer this question. Any general tips for meal prepping? I am a big fan of meal prepping, and I talk to people a lot about meal prepping. So, there's a website that I love called Greatist, GREATIST.org, and that has lots of great meal prep resources. But when it comes to meal prepping, I would say that favorite my favorite tool for meal prepping is, here you go, is the sheet pan. You can do wonders with a sheet pan. It's not letting me like drop that file in.
Yeah,
Let me see.
if you just open the chat box of Zoom, and it
Oh, okay, wait.
yeah,
Isn't this, I think I'm looking at the Zoom chat box.
are you looking at it?
Oh, wait, here I see. Okay, I see. I got it. Okay, so a sheet pan, which is basically like most people have like a cookie sheet or a big sheet. Honestly, at the beginning of every week, I roast up whatever vegetables I have around. You can put salmon on there, you can put chicken. It's just a great way, like broccoli, cauliflower, sweet potatoes, red pepper, onion, whatever I have. I roast up a big slew of vegetables and I roast them up for half an hour with lots of spices on them, and I put them in the refrigerator. And that's like my greatest meal prep thing,
Oh,
because you can eat those all week long. You can put them in salads, you can take them for lunch. It's just you can throw them into as part of a dinner, but it's just a great way to kind of have something ready to go. And so I highly recommend that. But greatest.com has lots of really good meal prep resources. So I send a lot of people there. Okay, I think this is uploading.
okay.
Hi, Kate.
Hi there. Who's this?
Hi, this is Jerry. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very informative, and I really enjoy all the questions that chat's bringing up. I have a question in regards to intermittent fasting. I wanted to try this in order to reduce the number of meals to consume, as to save time preparing and consuming a meal. As long as I get enough nutrition from my meals, is choosing when to eat a large factor in diet?
Well, so I'm not a fan of intermittent fasting. I wouldn't do it just for the purposes of time saving. The reason I don't like intermittent fasting is because it's not something for most people that they would be able to maintain long term. So you're putting your body into a state, and then it's, maybe you don't do it on the weekends, or maybe there's some days that it's not convenient for you. So then it becomes this very unsustainable pattern. I think that you can reduce sort of the window of when you're eating to a point, but only if it's something you think you're going to be able to, if that, excuse me one second, if that is going to become, if that's a pattern you can live with. So as far as your question about picking the timing, I would pick timing if you are determined to do it. I would try to keep the window very reasonable. Like I wouldn't reduce it below, say, 10 hours, because I just don't think long term it's good for your health. And then within those 10 hours, I would still try to have a little normalcy in your schedule. I have a friend who is a cancer survivor, and she does intermittent fasting like forever, but that's just her schedule. She eats in a 10-hour window, but it's normal for her. I mean, it's going along with kind of the listening to your body. That's the schedule that works for her body. I wouldn't do it as I'm going to do this for 2 months and then stop, because chances are you're going to fall back into whatever you were doing before. Now I've completely talked myself out of the question. Was the question about when you would actually eat within the window?
I think you've answered all my questions.
And many more.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we are already running out of time. If there is one more question from the participants.
I see. Can you share your mail ID here? I'm going to type it in here. Oh, here, wait. Let's see that. Can you? Is that my email? Here, wait. Actually, let me just do this one, because I don't know if I'm putting that in right. Yeah. Anybody is welcome to email me if you have questions, if there's something I didn't touch on or that you just didn't want to have to bring up in the group. I always have lots of resources. So if anything comes up, you're totally welcome to reach out. And, I hope this was good information.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Kate, for our wonderful session on the meal prep. I really enjoyed it. It was very interactive and beneficial for all of us. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.